Our next speaker is Vice President and leads Microsoft's developer outreach program. His name is Steve Guggenheimer, and Stephen is here to share with us some of Microsoft's insights on what's happening in the technology industry. And he's also here to share some tips and advice with a number of the startup companies here on how they might engage better with larger enterprise. Dying to hear what Stephen says. Stephen, welcome to the stage. And I'm thrilled to see you wearing a green top. So welcome.
Thank you so much. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here, an honor with all the speakers. Besides the Web Summit, which is an incredible event, it turns out there's a test match this weekend in rugby. The South African team is here to play Ireland, so I thought I'd step up in honor and support of our wonderful hosts. Now, good plan, because obviously conversation topic at the pub tonight is American, who plays rugby. Let's have that conversation. The one downside to the plan, turns out the Springboks are staying at the same hotel I am. So the guy who was most unpopular around breakfast this morning was the American in an Irish rugby jersey amongst all the Springbok players and fans and the reporters and the rest. So interesting start to the day. I thought I'd start a little bit on how we all got here and then spend a little bit of time on enterprise specifically, since this is the enterprise side. Having been in the industry a long time, it's kind of fun to watch the collection of people that come to an event like this. We used to have very specific trade shows and events around certain ecosystems. But what's happened over time is the convergence of technologies has really led to a collision of ecosystems or industries. And collision might be a bit of a strong term, so let's just say overlap. All right? So on the device side, we're at the point where the memory, the radio stacks, the chips, the processors, the glass, from anything from what I might wear on my wrist to what's in what's in your pocket with the phone, to your tablet, to your PC, to your TV, it's all the same. All right? And that means we can have more and more divergence of devices over time that share common technologies. And of course, all the content's gone digital, and we have the cloud for services. So what happens is, there used to be very distinct ecosystems for each device. So the ODMs and the OEMs for the phones built the phones. They had very specific retail channels they sold them through with the operators. The carriers, fed the data and the content to them. And if I'm a media company or a software provider, I can work with that ecosystem to get distribution for my service or my bits or my content. And that ecosystem was different from the television ecosystem, and it was different from the PC ecosystem. So it's really fun to talk to media companies today. You used to have these really nicely divided ecosystems, and they could absolutely optimize their revenue across them by having these sort of barriers between them. Well, all those barriers have come down. And so now you come to a phenomenal conference like this where you have media companies and athletes and technology companies and software providers and distributors and OEMs and pipe owners, and they're all collaborating, they're all competing, they're all in the same swimming pool now, all working together. Tons of fun, makes for great conversation. You can sort of spend your morning with a media company and your afternoon with a distributor and your evening with an OEM and have a bunch of very common conversations. Now, when you switch that over and you switch into the enterprise, the technology trends are all the same, but the evolution path is a little bit different because they have huge investments in existing technology, right? They have existing devices, they have existing content and services and apps that they run. And so the trick is how do you plug in? And I would posit that there are some things you might want to do to make it easier. They're all at a crossroads. They're all thinking about bring your own device, consumerization of IT, all the things going on in the Internet of Things. They want to play, but it's not just start over. The large enterprise organizations, and even the medium-sized ones, they're not going to start from scratch and do everything from the beginning. So I might suggest we try meeting them, in particular if you're a startup, somewhere along the journey. And I'll spend time on three things. Sort of meeting them, finding some places to plug in, scale, and maybe relationships, because all of those matter. In terms of meeting them where they are, I'll just pick a few examples, and I'm going to pull from my background and some of the things we work on, because that's how I spend my time. Let's start with just login and identity. Right on the consumer side, we all have our own separate identities for consumer. We might use Facebook to log into lots of different applications, or Twitter. You'll pick your ID system. But on the commercial side, that doesn't work so well, because honestly, they don't want to know all about your personal life, or maybe they do, but that's not part of what they want. But just as importantly, they want to protect their information and the content for the business. So they run a different identity system. They run something called Active Directory. Now, if you want to meet them halfway, about 80% of organizations use Active Directory as their ID system. So one of the things we've done with Azure and our cloud offering on the platform is create Active Directory for Azure that allows you to have a single line login to your application from inside the company's own directory or their own login methodology. And it doesn't mean you have to run on Azure. You can build your bits on Google if you want your app. You can run it on Amazon. You can run your own cloud. But for the login, if 80% of the organizations are using Active Directory, maybe having a single sign-on to your software as a service offering might be a good starting point to meeting them somewhere along the line. That's one idea. Another might be the experience, right? Turns out lots of organizations, in small, medium, large, use Office as a front end for line of business applications, right? They use it for things like getting receipts out, doing remittance, working inside the corporation. And so a long tradition has been for people to build line of business applications that hook into email or calendaring, etc. Now in a SaaS world, you don't want to go hook into the old existing stuff, but one of the things we've been working on is taking Office and turning it into a service. It's got about 50 million users today, and it runs on iOS, it runs on Android, and of course it runs on Windows. So if you wanted to build a service that connected into Office 365, there's a set of APIs and an SDK that run cross-platform that would allow you to connect into something that organizations are typically familiar with. Two examples. Let me pick another one, which is on the cloud side. There are a lot of organizations that want to move to the cloud, but they're not going to take everything there all at once. And so one of the things we've worked on with Azure and our cloud platform is having some symmetry between on-premises offerings in the cloud. So if you wanted to have an application that runs behind the firewall and then migrate it to the cloud, or scale it to the cloud, or move it back and forth, or keep your data behind the firewall, which lots of organizations do, but it maybe have your processing or some of your compute outside, you can have that symmetry back and forth. All right? So there's lots of different ways to meet enterprise organizations where they are without asking them to completely start over. And my suggestion, if you ask them to completely start over, it's not very rational. Look, I deal with a lot of organizations that are still running mainframes back there. They're trying to connect the mainframes out to the cloud. Okay? Second, let's talk a little bit about scale. Because somewhere in here there's going to be a startup, hopefully, that wins one of the awards or the contests that are going on at the show. And the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to have a whole bunch of interest. And when you deal with large organizations, by definition, they're mostly global. Lots of startups and VCs I talk to, they want to make sure that their offering can go outside of one country, across the borders, especially in Europe. But the other thing is scale, support, redundancy, resilience. There's a whole bunch of things to think about. On our side, we've been building services actually for a long time. Our web-based email service, about 400 million users. All right, OneDrive, about 250 million users. There's about 2 billion Skype minutes a day, 60 million Xbox Live users playing games against each other, watching TV. So we sort of get scale. And it turns out if you want to run at scale globally, you have to build the data centers to support it. The second thing is you get a lot of learning when you run at scale. Let me help you. Email may not sound like a mission-critical application. You take some business's email down from Office 365, you're going to get a lot of feedback on how that is mission-critical. So we sort of live in the center of running mission-critical systems at scale. And all of those services, they add up to be the second largest set of end-user services on the planet. All right? So what that does is it forces you to build the back end, the platform at scale. And scale for us, if you start with a data center, so we're here in Ireland, you start with a building that's the size of a rugby pitch. For those of you that don't play rugby, let's imagine a football pitch. You take that field and you fill it with servers. That's one building. In an area, in a geographic location, 16 of those football size or rugby side pitches filled with servers, that's at one area's data center. We have those in 17 areas around the world. You want to operate in China, Brazil, Australia, you want to follow the government regulations for data sovereignty in a country, you want to scale up, you need that type of back end. That's the type of thing that allows a startup to be global instantaneously, to have scale. And it's not an all or none game. No one says, oh, you got to do everything on our platform or Google's platform or Amazon's platform. In the cloud, you can mix and match. But if you're thinking about some of the services at scale, things like identity, that one makes sense. Maybe some of the others like machine learning. I hear about, I've got data, I've got this great data as an asset, data as a platform. Data is a wonderful thing. But I meet with lots of startups who have data, but no plan for how you're going to actually take it and do something with it. Having a machine learning service on the back end built off of something at the scale of Bing that you can use against your data to provide insight, match that with some business intelligence or insight against the web, against other data, that actually takes that data and brings it forward. So when you think about scale, the second thing you want to do on the scale side is have that opportunity to go global, to have the kind of government support, the resiliency, the growth you would want instantaneously. And it turns out that doing that and being connected to the enterprise at the same time with some of the other assets we talked about, not too many companies do that. The born in the cloud platform providers, Amazon and Google, they don't have any of that enterprise on-premise infrastructure. It's not how they grew up. And the on-premises infrastructure companies, the Oracles, the HPs, the IBMs, they have none of the cloud assets. So that gets to a very interesting set of partnerships, right? If you look at some of the relationships today, right? Recently we announced partnerships with IBM, right? With Oracle and with SAP. Well, why would they do that with us? Well, it turns out those are enterprise customers or companies, and they want to work with enterprise customers, and they need a cloud backend that matches to the enterprise needs, and it turns out that's something we've done for a long time in competition with them, but we can also collaborate with them. Go to the other side of the spectrum, take a Salesforce. Why would we and Salesforce partner together? Well, we have that Office front end that I spoke about earlier. They have a CRM front end. What more logical thing to bring together for end users than the CRM system and Office, because they go hand in hand. So back to those line of business applications. Take some of the born in the cloud infrastructure or developer areas. Take Docker or Cloudera, right? Those are companies, again, that we partner with. So in this world where the barriers are down and you're starting over and you're meeting at the crossroads, there's a set of partnerships and relationships going on that I might suggest are good starting points, in particular for how we think about startups and who you might want to partner with over time. On the startup side, we do a lot of work with startups trying to find the right ways to be helpful, honestly. And now, the technology side is one, but like those partnerships, relationships are the other. So we've been doing some fun things recently. We work with partners on accelerators, right? So take accelerators around the world. But we also run a few ourselves in Israel, in India, in China, in Redmond, Germany, Brazil. And we've actually had partners who want to work with startups, but they don't have the technical capability to do that. It's not normal for an insurance company to run an accelerator. So we partnered with American Family Insurance, right, to do an Internet of Things home automation accelerator, so American Family Insurance can get very close to a set of startups that are working on IoT for the home. They can bring in great customer feedback, great sort of thought process from how the insurance companies might take advantage of it. We can work with them on the technology side, and you get this phenomenal marriage. Same thing with BD Beck & Dickinson in Israel. Same thing with Akamai in Israel, doing an accelerator around security. Hot topic for commercial entities today, security. So doing that kind of work is one piece. Another is just customer access. We spend a large amount of time with enterprise corporations. They really want to know what's going on in the startup world. They really want to connect. The ability to filter, to meet, to know, to have the right folks, it doesn't happen easily. We run accelerators, we work in the startup community, we have a number of programs, so we'll build these customer access events. Think of it like an event you would do. We had an open mic last night for startups here in Ireland. We would do the same type of thing, but in this case with the enterprise customers as the receivers in that particular conversation. So we have this ability to mix and match the startup community with the enterprise community in a win-win situation. So, running out of time on my clock, all up, as you think about sort of the world we're in today where the barriers are down, I would suggest meeting enterprise customers at least partly where they are versus asking them to start over completely. It's probably a good idea. And there are a number of ways to do that. We can help with some, lots of other partners can help with others, but meet them part way. The second is scale matters. And when you're a startup and you want to get to that next level, great ideas are wonderful, execution's important, people are important, you got to be ready to scale, and scale is a big deal. 3, it's about relationships like any other part of the business. Enterprise, working with enterprises is just like working with the folks in this room. It's about relationships. So with that, I wish you a good show. I wish Ireland good luck on the weekend, and have a great one.